Don't take the lightning. Percy got that lightning. Plasma in my veins.
Hello, Lightning Tamers. Percy here. We're just about to begin the live stream for Sparking Creativity. I'll just begin here shortly, jumping right into our presentation. So, just to let you guys know, this is a sponsored live stream, and it is sponsored by the Corning Museum of Glass, which is home of the most comprehensive collection of glass. The Corning Museum of Glass is the perfect excuse to take your trip to the Finger Lakes. Come and explore 3,500 years of glass masterpieces from around the world. Witness the cutting edge of modern glass art for some of the biggest names in the game. And spectate master glass artists in live narrated glass-blowing demonstrations. And if you've been looking for a way into the glass-making world, head to the studio for your make-your-own glass experience. It's a great affordable way to see if glass-making is for you. And no matter what brings you in, the Corning Museum of Glass will help you see glass in a whole new light. Learn more today and plan your trip at cmog.org. That's cmog.org. So again, we're doing a little bit of a recap of my residency at Corning Museum of Glass. And we will kind of be, looking at what I've been doing during that time as I was exploring a new body of plasma light sculpture, particularly at their studio called the Corning Museum of Glass Studio, which has had a recent and major expansion, very similar to what's been happening at the Pittsburgh Glass Center and also in Norfolk with the Chrysler Museum. Here I'll pretty much discuss the value of the residency at the Corning Museum of Glass, inspirations behind the new series called Atupa, and how I went about in my journey of exploring this new body of work, a walkthrough of techniques like glass solder, and some of the lessons I learned for future projects. So a lot of what I'm going to be covering will be things that will be sort of in progress type of thing. I'm still working out a lot of the work, and I've been improving a lot of the pieces I've been doing prior to the residency. So what is the value of an artist residency at the Corning Museum of Glass? One of the bigger things is networking with artists in residence. The glass community and glass network is connected. A lot of people describe it as small, but in this case, I would say definitely connected. The two resident artists that were with me during this time were Katie Newell and Ross Delano. And what was kind of exciting was the factor that we have all been sort of circling around the sort of aspect of light. With Katie Newell working with cast glass, looking at color density through color saturation and shaping forms that were sort of changing how light refracts through the glass. And Ross Delano has been working with a production of lamps, playing mad scientist by using glow-in-the-dark bioluminescent creatures, and also creating his own sort of lamps based on his family history through hot air balloons. I think it's very important to have these people around you when you're doing such a residency, and this is the longest residency I've ever had in my art career. So it helped to have people that you were both familiar with and got to grow close with. I was able to spend my birthday during this time and this residency and share it with people that I normally wouldn't. And it was great to sort of see and bounce off of each other and help each other in various aspects. Katie was working with 3D printing in regards to her forms and work, and I brought my own 3D printer as well, and we were able to help each other troubleshoot some problems that we ran into. You have to also think about the glass community. During the residency, I was working in both the hot shop and the cold shop. And this meant that I was going to need an extra hand to get a lot of work done. So Chris Giordano, or Gio for short, was really great to work with. This guy is incredible glass blower, and incredible cold worker. Which I was, like I said, the community is connected. So I got to meet Gio prior to the residency at the Pittsburgh Glass Center when he taught there this past summer, as well as when he came back invited as a demonstrator for our sort of grand opening and big fundraiser Art on Fire for the Pittsburgh Glass Center. I also invited my friend and brother in plasma, Sean Bradley, who is also equally a skilled glassblower and skilled cold worker, someone who you can bounce ideas off of and troubleshoot any type of problem. I relied on his hands, both in terms of cold working and handling the pieces, his encouragement, his insight, as well as his cooking skills, because sometimes when you're grinding hard in these residencies, you don't really treat your body well. And so it's good to have an appreciation and share some meals with friends. The majority of the reason why someone would choose to work in these residencies, yes, we know, to make work. And a lot of that means doing new things, or maybe reinforcing and exploring things that they were thinking about. And for me, I wanted to see how fast I can make this work if I can just have deep focus on it. And that meant how much can I spend on, how little time can I spend carving into the glass? What quick edits can I make? And it takes some risks, honestly, to see whether I can push the limits of this glass solder technique. It's also important to note that there are other people as well that I can note who were great, who made this experience great. And that is the staff and faculty of the Corning Museum of Glass. And this is not a comprehensive list of those who have interacted with. Amy Schwartz, director of the studio, Harry Seaman, senior facility manager, Kevin Fletcher, assistant facility manager, someone that was my point person for major things that I needed in order to set up my kiln for doing plasma, being one of the first sort of resident artists doing plasma since the expansion. Devin Connolly, facility team leader, that's an on-site technician who's been there to ask questions, assist you getting this or that, and helping, facilitate a good experience. Neil Paulstanian, facility coordinator, also assistant technician, and getting things and working through problems. Moira Holbrook and Kelly McKee, studio coordinators, additional technicians on duty that you can rely on. Richard Whitley, senior programs manager, someone with a lot of experience that you could bounce off new and old ideas, cross-reference things that you might not have thought about between cast glass and maybe blown glass, and finding that relationship. Ann Jackal, residency and project manager, my point person for all the different information going around. There was so much things going at Corning, from all the different celebrations, connecting with donors, which was a great experience overall, like connecting with people who are genuinely interested in the science behind what you're doing, and having the nerd out talk with many of our donors and people interested in what the Corning Museum was doing. Reese Peacock, curatorial fellow and post-war and contemporary glass. Contemporaries, your people out there making things happen and putting a different face out there in the world of glass and art, and connecting me with the collections, and having been a great source of conversation and an amazing guest on the podcast Taming Lightning. And there's a lot of that's been documented, and I can't wait to see the full video that that the Corning Museum's digital team is putting together, and that will be thanks to Brad Patoka and Alexis Grethen. Sorry if I butcher your names, but these are the people I want to thank for my experience at the Corning Museum of Glass, which was about just putting a lot of deep focus into the making of the work, exploring new ideas, and trying to get something done. And man, it's inspiring me still, even though my life is a little bit slower due to work. I'm moving steps way further than if I did not have this experience. And that's something important that I have to mention about this residency. I'm going to take a quick moment to take a look if there's anyone saying anything in our chat here. Yeah, research lab, man, Sean. That's what I'm saying, man. We need people out there that can support each other in this field. It could be very easily, we could be looking just for ourselves, but we're out here reaching arm left and right. And, if we're not scrambling, we can definitely, make that sustainable. All right. So another part of this residency is sharing knowledge and growing interest in plasma. Going into this residency, I made a proposal that I would, as they were trying to set up their neon studio, that I would love to use their studio in its full capacity: hot shop, cold shop, kiln shop, neon shop, and make my work in full completion. I wanted to show that my work can be done in this residency, that everything can happen here at Corning. If everything can happen at Pittsburgh Glassner and what they built, Corning can do the same. Unfortunately, they weren't able to have the neon studio finished by them, but that was not a problem. As part of my proposal, I said I would bring my own equipment, and I brought the Light Lab manifold Easaloo from the Pittsburgh Glass Center. And here's a quick clip of me setting that up, a hyperlapse. And this system was something that was meant to be portable. This was designed for Light Lab at the Pittsburgh Glass Center, which is a part of our outreach program. I go and visit high schools, middle schools, go to community centers. I talk about glass. I talk about my journey in plasma. I talk about the science connected in STEAM that makes this medium what it is and what it means to me to work in neon and plasma. It's made glass push me into things of material science. It had me see connections that I would normally not see and investigate deeper into this practice in a way that helps me understand the world and how it functions a little bit better. In the end, the full assembly allowed me to put this together and work with their current kiln. I have all my scientific equipment, my oscilloscope, my power supplies, and that runs a glass tube to the bottom. There's that sort of metal accordion beforehand. That was something that a contemporary Aaron Restall had provided me free of charge, man, just to support me in the ability to make that last minute adjustment. So if you can see that corrugated tube, that's flexible line that allows me to make that slight adjustment that made this work for us. And that took maybe the first 2 weeks to get set up. And the purpose was just to get that thing to outgas, evacuate, test all for leaks. Because I knew that first few weeks was just getting my preparation ready. It's popping up here. Let's get going. It was also a way to explore new ideas and deep practice. I'm going to show you some of the pieces that came out of this residency, whether they were part of being filled or assembled here or made anew. So first up is Lemon Starberry, a piece that I made with Sean Bradley almost 2 years ago. And we carved it up, fire polished it, an extension of my Inspired Neon Citrus. And I'll play that again. And I'm just excited about this little sprite action that's happening in the piece, and I hope that stays. I don't know if that will stay. That's some of the things that are a little unknown in terms of plasma, but I've had this piece sit and run for quite a while. You never know. You never really know. But I really love that effect. I'll just have to really take care of setting up my shadow box to really help make that visualized. There was a piece here I'm calling Aurora Purple. This began in my residency at Alfred University in 2022. And then at Pilchuck in 2023, I had taken the same piece and assembled it with the help of Courtney and Sam. I forget your last name, man. Sam, who helped assemble that piece. So it came with me to Corning so that I can to make another piece to fully encapsulate that artwork and finish it up. And then another piece here, which is the tri-intersecting donut, in which Sean led the filling of this piece, and we're calling this mixture Zargon. It's a xenon and argon mix. A big part of this deep practice part is also to use some products that I've been developing. And one of these products is the dynameter, in which I use an oscilloscope to read the output of my transformer. In simple terms, this meter allows me to match my gas mixture to the load of my transformer, putting them more in line with each other so that this can run efficiently without burning out the transformer. It's still in development, and this is something that I had taken over development from Steve Ward, who had provided the blueprint for this probe. And I'm just enhancing that design and use of it to provide it to the community of people who are wanting to look for more quantitative information for filling for plasma. And I'm going to share a couple things soon. Work's been busy for me, but I have a few updates on that product that I'm developing. So stay tuned or subscribe to Taming Lightning blog. So what is plasma? I mean, there might be people that aren't familiar with what I do. I always tried my best to reintroduce myself in this game. If you don't know by now, Percy Eccles II, Taming Lightning. I'm exploring plasma as my main focus. And so what is plasma? Plasma is a state of matter where gas becomes a pool of charged particles. In this heightened state, it releases both heat and light. And when charged with even more energy, it goes and becomes plasma. And this includes things like neon signage, plasma light sculpture, which I am making, fluorescent tubing, as well as lightning and the sun as natural examples. When I'm talking about plasma or plasma light sculpture, I'm talking about art. And this is the process of making these objects using glass sculpting techniques and filling them with various noble gases and charging with electricity to produce a dynamic and interactive light. So one of the main features of plasma is its interactivity, whether it's by proximity, your nearness to the object, or touch. We're using a combination of gases, whether they're noble or not. And we are looking to get a range of different visual effects and expressions. And it differs from neon in that capacity. They're similar, but they're not the same. With neon, you're bending a tube and you're maintaining the linear factor of the tube throughout the entire formation of the piece, whether that is sculptural or not. So this is the main focus of my residency, is to make my glasswork be compatible with plasma and explore the limits and push through those boundaries that I might have found myself running into. As an educator, I always try to present as much information as I can free. And the best simple way to explain that the scope of what comes with plasma is the elements of plasma diagram, which has been praised for its ability to provide that scope. I divide it into three categories: vessel crafting, alchemy, and technology. I think those terms are really clear. Vessel crafting is how you work with the glass. Alchemy is how you fill that glass, and technology is how you use both those things to come together in the technology to make it happen for plasma. And there's no incidental nature to this Venn diagram. I was very intentional even in the overlaps. Say between vessel crafting and alchemy. I know that if I blow the glass and I choose a particular glass color, it will influence the choice that I make for what gases I use to light it up. It may even influence the way that if I chose to use phosphors within my blown glass form, that I would then influence my choice of gases and mixes, even between vessel crafting and technology. I'm understanding of the vacuum equipment, the kilns, the ovens, the hot shop equipment in a way that I can think about, for example, understanding where to place my electrode. That's cold working. That's hot shop. How do I manipulate the object to put the hole where I want it to be in the final form? Leak detection, using technology to find areas that could have leaks. And plasma drivers, the scale of my piece. I know this is a big thing that people want to know about. They want to know how do I tell what the scale of the object, which power supply to use, how to power it. And that's a complicated question, but there's also this weird other thing that's happening that I'll talk about later down the road. And I think that's where the dynamometer kind of comes into play. The dynamometer helps me find the efficiency of a gas mixture. So we don't really know for sure the measure and limit of the efficiency of your gas mixture to the scale of the object. Because if you can make a very efficient gas mixture, then probably a little power can go a long way, or a lot further than you think. I like to impart knowledge about the anatomy of the sculptures here. Some terms to think about here, or to put in mind, is that we are breaking down this entire art piece into its parts. What is the glass portion that you're making? Do you have a tubulation, a port in which you can evacuate the gas and put in the gases that you want? Understanding that part of that feature is the gases you mix into that form. The electrode you use, or no electrode. The power supplies, the transformer, and how that all comes together, the build and assembly. How are you displaying this? How are you pairing the need for electrical wiring with your sculpture? Are you hiding it? Are you ignoring it? Are you including it? So what inspirations are behind the new body of work? In 2016, which is the first year that I moved to the Pittsburgh Glass Center, I took a class called Blown and Cut by Ethan Stern. This introduced both hot shop and cold shop together in terms of making Grawl blanks and be able to carve them in a explorative manner. And from that workshop and various conversations with Ethan, I've grown to love cold working and find it as part of my drawing exercise in glass, which began the Inspire series, which is blown and engraved glass. For me, the Inspire series began as sort of an exercise on drawing on glass and working through engraving and carving techniques. To be honest, it was a way for me to also work out and be sort of intuitive in terms of the flaws that happen with my glass blowing practice, bubbles being trapped, scuzzing of the surface, texture I don't like on the surface. And I use it as a map for how I'm going to solve cutting through those areas that I don't like and make it very amazing and beautiful. And it starts from 2 lines. The end goal was that I would, as also inspired by Baroque artist Bernini, I would have a completely different pattern or view as you rotate around the piece, that no view is the same, so that it would inspire someone to sort of walk around the piece, seeing the change in the patterning and beauty of the object. Honestly, I guess it's really an aesthetic choice, but it's a practice that led me to the next step, which is to fill it with plasma. And you could check out the live stream that includes this talk, but the inspired neon citrus was the result of combining a growing confidence in my knowledge of plasma and techniques with something that I was very familiar with. And we have to be honest with ourselves about our practices. So I'll be honest and say this, as I have in the presentation I did live, as well as the slideshow that's available on the website, is that this knowledge comes from a long line of predecessors, people that came before me. The ability to apply the solder came from Ed Kirshner. The mixture came through looking at a presentation from Carl Willis, and the evolution of that mixture comes through a conversation with Monty Hepburn. And those conversations and those presentations provided the footsteps for me to continue to climb further. So I do not claim this mixture. This is a collaboration between 2 different generations of plasma, 3 different generations of plasma or more. So that's the beauty of being a part of a true community, is that you celebrate people's divergence into the field. And you try not to own too much of it, because guess what? Someone could have found this same process on their own, and I share it freely. The portion of this residency focused primarily on inspirations from African artifacts and objects. I think because artifacts and objects of great and little importance have a diverse vocabulary in African culture, it allowed me to kind of free myself a little bit and give me a form to play around with, whether it's bells, weapons, lanterns, or masks, where I try to imitate what I believe the design choices made by the artisan. I do have the names of these objects, and the names are important, but for the purpose of this talk, not significant. But these are where I have my starting point. And the evolution was to take form and think about these objects. So it started as such, carving, layering color, applying handles, and not quite knowing where to go from there. I didn't have the vocabulary then, which was probably around 2018-ish, 2019-ish. I have to double check my image. But on the right, it begins the Atupa series, truly, where Atupa means, which is a Yoruban word for lantern or lamp. And this process is an inspiration from the Inspire series, where I take the carving mechanisms from the Inspire series, create a graw blank, carve into it, bring it up, polish it, but I also add to it in the assembly, in the polishing process. This way I can have a free reign of carving the object and then pre-plan where I want to attach different nodules onto the piece. And this was the first one, Atupa Limelight. So you might be wondering, as I draw inspiration and let go of the reference, how important are the references to the work, and should the audience know from looking at the work? At this time, seeing or even knowing the visual reference is not important, and perhaps it can help inform the viewer's interpretation. But for me, at this moment, it's an exercise of aesthetic and form, where I dial in my usage of color and process before I evoke concept or meaning of my own. And sometimes work has intended meaning or emergent meaning. This means that if I had an intended meaning, I have all these different visual aspects, this story, this language, and that's what I think it becomes. And sometimes I make work, and like this work, the process itself being emergent, the meaning and the work comes through the process of creating it. Do I know what this means in the end? No, not yet. The work's not complete. It's in progress. And I think I like both the ideas of being someone who is planning something, but also constantly editing something till there is a sort of stopping point to then observe, meditate, and then write about what the work actually is. In the end, for me, the work, I can have a meaning, I can prescribe a meaning, but it doesn't matter. The meaning comes from the meaning is important to the observer, and the observer may have a completely different response. But oftentimes, drawings begin the process of creating a form and then editing bounces back and forth. It's like I have a drawing, I make the thing doesn't look that great, I do a new drawing, cut the thing. It's a sort of a back and forth process. But to kind of help clarify that a bit, because I'm sort of getting a little bit rambly, is that I take the main body of a blank piece of glass, I carve it, I add additions on the side, and then I start to figure out how do I assemble this topper when the bottom area is pretty exposed. If you're familiar with glass, I was avoiding sort of picking up the glass piece in the bottom or picking it up on the topper to assemble them together hot. And the question I want to ask in this game plan was, can I solder on two different axes? And that will become a little bit more clear as we go through the rest of this presentation. If anything, preparation is step 0. So this whole residency was to be able to make these works and try to find what's my steps for doing that. I had a pretty clear idea of what that would mean, and that meant I would start with making sort of these blown bullet-shaped cups that I would stuff with a different color. That's how I get my color layering. I blow a cup of color, I make a bubble, I drop it inside that cup, blow into it, and now I have 2 layers of color. And then from there, and that 2 layers of color, I make my shape, my blank, my graw blank. And I would go through the process of making cups, making blanks, stuffing them, and making parts. So that over time, I would just go through the rotation of assembling and making parts that will eventually come together hot or be carved or fire polished. And what that sort of looks like is this. I have my blank. I began to carve that blank, spending, 2 to 4 to 6 hours, sometimes in one shot, sometimes in 2 days, sometimes over time. But the idea was, how fast can I go with this? How dirty can I be? And the real reality here is that I had to be really careful about how fast I was moving, and I would rotate different pieces until I kind of found where I was ready to stop. And it had to be careful, too. I didn't want to carve through too deep, where now I have a thin layer of glass and it could break or buckle when being heated. So after I've engraved it, I have this here, which is the piece just before I set it up in the kiln. I pick it up and I start to add additional pieces I prepared prior to fire polishing the surface. Now, the purpose of the fire polishing, if you check out my live stream, which includes Inspired Neon Citrus, is to reconstitute, to reassemble that integrity of the glass. As even though the glass is strong under compression, the tension side is still a weaker structure of glass. So I want to basically reestablish the strength in the glass by melting it back to a singular surface. And then I could also make that nice and shiny too, right? And then add my additional donuts on there, or shapes, so that I have another area for the gases to travel and expand through. And that was one part of the piece. I could have stopped there and made a whole bunch of pieces like that, added electrode on top, just like the first Atupa piece, but I wanted to push it further. I wanted to figure out, how can I put a topper on that thing? To put the topper on that, and this is, again, co-working being a big part of the process, careful planning and playful editing, electrode placement, and final assembly. So when you have your side pieces on there, I core drilled using the diamond drill through the top and the side. And in that side profile is where I'm going to put my electrode. This piece will have a singular visional point. It has a single front that's going to be viewed for it. And it may, depending on my presentation, I might be able to see it from the side. But I then put a countersink bit, a cone bit, so that I can set in my electrode. And these pieces here were several edits, where like either I've had this on a long stem but cut it down, had some kind of other piece here, but replaced it, and constantly kind of thinking about what shapes or arrangements would I like to pair with these different cut elements. Which leads us to the electrode attachment. So the electrode attachment method here is kiln fire glass solder. I know it's a mouthful, but it's the best descriptor of what I'm doing here. So the idea of a glass solder is nothing new. There are many types of solders used in vacuum sealing that are commercially available, but they can be expensive and generally not available for most consumers. By kiln firing a low temp enamel, we can fuse the glass components together without them slumping. The idea is we're using this enamel normally used on a surface to join two pieces of glass. And this requires that you do a lot of testing and experiments. I'm confident that this works with spruce pine and has also worked with Glasma as well, and Kugler Clear. So if you're going to try using this in your process, you'll want to do small tests with that glass that you're using between two pieces and see if it will crack or separate. The coefficient of expansion is to be very important here. And you can see in this illustration, this image on the left-hand side, we have the cut down of the electrode shell, which allows me to reduce that protrusion off the top of the piece, where if I left the normal neon electrode, it would be sticking out. Does this mean you have to use a neon electrode? No. I use the neon electrode because it's a very simple thing I can purchase, and it's affordable, and I don't have to make the extra effort to make that object. Though it is a skill that can be learned, and I think it should be learned, I still utilize the neon electrode because it gives me that easy pathway to illuminate the gases inside compared to doing it in a way that's capacitive. That means through radio field alone or through experimenting with electrode made by hand, which is something that you can do. I do sell glass solder kits and Ruche soft flux enamel, which is available on the taminglightning.net/store website. So if you're interested in that, you can definitely purchase the starter kit, or you can just purchase the enamel. And the process here is pretty dang simple. So soldering involves mixing the enamel with distilled water. I'm trying not to add any extra metals or anything that's in there. I played around. If you look in the glass solder kit, I'll use a little bit of glass tack to give me a little bit of stickiness, but not a lot, no more than maybe 1 or 2 drops. And I mix it together on a palette knife so I can really make sure I'm mixing together all those little granules of the enamel powder, which is glass. And then I use a soft synthetic brush, either a wide brush or a thin brush, depending on my use, to then paint onto that surface. So I'm painting around the edge of the backside of this electrode. And then I also paint the edge of the electrode itself before matching them together. Both of them still wet before they touch. And notice the orientation of the actual glass piece. They're oriented in a way that they're vertically aligned. I'm letting gravity and the lower center of gravity of the metal shell to help seat it into the countersink of the glass. It's like I'm doing woodworking, but with glass. This is what I think the true evolution of glassworking has led all these different crafts to. After I fired this way, my question I was trying to ask myself, which I did answer in this residency, is if I have soldered this vertically because it'll stay in place, will it still stay in place if I rotate it and have it sticking out the side to attach another piece, such as the topper that I chose to match with this? And the answer is yes. I supported that piece just in case I wanted to move, but I found after firing with the temperature, which is like 1050 degrees Fahrenheit, which is labeled with the enamel itself, 1050 degrees Fahrenheit, that after I fired it once, it doesn't move the same way at that temperature. So I was able to fire the enamel with the electrode first, then turn it upright, and then fire it vertically this way so that they could sit together. I'm currently teaching a class, an 8-week class here at the Pittsburgh Glass Center about this process. I'll be teaching a class at Toledo this summer, as well as the Salem Community College, also teaching this process as well. So you can either bring glass that you have already made and attach an electrode and fill it with gases for plasma, or you can bring ready-made glasses. And I want to just stick here a little bit because I want to show that the method of stacking and putting these things together is just intuitive. The idea of how you stack and line these things up is you turn into a 6-year-old and you got your building blocks and you figure out how to line these blocks up just right so you can support the glass and support all the parts around it and keep it from sliding left and right. So I chose a lot of heavy pieces of kiln brick and kiln pieces and kiln furniture to keep everything from twisting, turning, or sliding left, right, forward, or back. This gets even deeper. I've used colored glass, and one of the things I was afraid of in this piece, Cobalt Spark, was I used cobalt, and it could be a pretty dense color. So I was worried that if I did not use phosphor, I would be able to punch through the darkness of the cobalt. And so illustrated here, which is a part of the Anatomy of Plasma Sculpture lecture, your phosphors and your glass color will influence your gas mixture. And to talk about phosphors a little bit, they are a light-emitting material that under normal lighting conditions just appear like white powder. But if you add UV, such as a black light or specialized wavelength of UV, it will illuminate in its chosen color. Most people are familiar with glow in the dark with greens and blues because they are the materials that easily absorb UV and emit light in our daily usage. Many of the colors that you see in neon signage come from phosphors as they react with the UV emitted from argon and mercury. And oftentimes other gases like neon produce a little bit of that, or krypton or xenon. So again, artists like Monty Hepburn or Harriet Swartzrock will use phosphors in colored glass lamps containing a mixture of something with krypton or xenon or very similar UV emission. And I almost want to update that aspect even more because one of the artists that have taken a class with me, Liz Klinger, which you can find on Instagram, has been really experimenting with phosphor and using different gases in her panel pieces that she's been working on. And I'm really excited to be able to share her work on the website soon, to give her props for really engaging in this process in a way that shows that this is doable. This can be doable with a fairly moderate budget. And I can only say good things about her work and how she's just kind of wanting to learn more and more and pushing what she can do with her own setup. But, okay, what colors did I use in this game? I have cobalt blue as the glass, and I used 6500K, so 6500K color phosphor, which is kind of like a daylight color, which is like a cool white. And what I did to kind of figure this out is I did a little bit of the phosphor and I tried to shine light through the glass or inside the glass to see how it would illuminate. And I felt confident that with the illumination that it was going to punch pretty brightly through. And you can see in this little sample on this little bit, the xenon kind of pressing through and really illuminating that powder, making it quite bright. If you're interested in, messing with phosphor powders in your plasma pieces, I do sell 4 basic phosphor powders: yellow, blue, green, and red. I'm looking to get more colors added to the store. I also have a phosphor color checker that can help you look at those lights, look at those colors as you mix them. So you can use that if you have a box of tubing, similar stuff that West Coast Custom sells, and that's on taminglightning.net/store. So the part everyone wants to get to, like everyone seems to be like, oh, we want to learn how to do plasma, but really we're asking, we want to get to the part where we get to mix the gases and see some amazing lights. I'll show you a quick little video here from the setup where it's still attached to the manifold using the dynameter there, which is coming soon. What I do in this process is I heat up the glass under vacuum, and then I start to flush it with noble gases. So heat it up to about 600 degrees Fahrenheit, hold that temperature for about 30 minutes, evacuate, cool it down to about 200 degrees Fahrenheit. I think I filled this around 173 degrees Fahrenheit, and started adding my gases bit by bit. In the process of making a plasma lamp, I kind of consider it similar to cooking. So you're adding little bits of gas to season the taste. You may do multiple flushes in this. And the thing here is I did a 2-torr with flush with neon. It's a cheap gas, helps me remove any trapped gases that might be at the end of that long tubulation, because it's like rinsing a wine bottle out. And I add up to 83 torr of xenon, which typically produces some kind of sharp, fine wiggle line of light blue that also adds a UV excitation of the phosphor. So you could try this mixture and see if it works for your form. Again, this form is pretty, it's a bit voluminous, but it also has all these different channels that the gas has to travel through and all the plasma has to wiggle through. So I was really dialing things in to the right pressure that allows that to make it pretty easy and abundant here. I use computer CAD or computer-aided design, 3D printing, and hardware in my process. So this is the stuff I've done after the residency. Very similar to the Atupa piece, I had 3D printed a piece to go onto the back of the lamp, and I used PC7 epoxy, something that I learned from Harriet Schwarzrock's use, as it has a very high temperature rating and a very strong bond to glass and plastic. The tints I would use here is you don't want to use just clean plastic. You want to rough up the plastic a little bit. You want to use a little bit of sandpaper on the back side of the glass so you have somewhat of a surface to attach to. And then really make sure you have all your tools in place. I learned a lot from doing Hextol glues and repairs in my own work and my own commissions. So I've used toothpicks and hot glue to keep things in place. And that's the design here. So I have my wire going through here. Incidentally, this means that the electrode is well protected. And then what I'll do next is I'll use sort of this electrical potting resin to fill this cavity to cover over the electrode, so it has no chance of being affected by heat or any other sort of impact. It should make it more protected, last longer than before. And then again, if this somehow breaks back there, then I just have to remove the whole thing and try the process again. But usually this means redoing the whole lamp. There's no really saving grace here. When you make the decision, you have to kind of settle with it, and that's sort of the thing you have to do. That's a commitment of soft glass. So I use a lot of 3D printing. I'm using these sort of clawed hanging. This could be used for like picture frames or bed frames or wall mounting. And the reason why I use this sort of mounting is I didn't want to use regular cleats where it could slide left and right. I wanted something that's really steady and put, because in the end in these plasma works, I want to be able to hand it off to someone and make it very easy for them to install the lamp into its hanging mechanism and plug it in, easy for them to get ready to light up. Because right now, not everyone has the knowledge and comfortability I have with doing all sorts of wiring. So I try to make it very simple to attach this onto a backer that I've sent with them. That's just a plug and play. But this took several iterations, finding the models for my hardware, and getting that all put together nice and easy. I'm still finding the right screws to get that situated, but I love to show my end progress, so this should be very helpful for anyone. And the program I use is Fusion 360. So sort of the finished lamp, this is before I add my mounting bracket, is this video here, which is an amazing video done by this Corning Museum of Glass digital team, which includes Brad and Alexis. We've shot this video in the same room that I was filling the plasma lamps in, and they did everything well to show off this object. I only wish it could have been shown in its full glory in terms of like finished work, but this will be a piece I will donate to the Corning Museum of Glass collection, and will be a part of an upcoming exhibition as well. Giving it all away, yes, sir. If no one takes notes, they know it's here. Now, along with this process, is I wanted to add another area of easy to display artwork. We are in a world here where we have all this technology that can make things unique and create unique experiences. But our gallery spaces and exhibition spaces are not caught up to 2025. We have people whose job is to make sure we're looking after the work, but may not have the comfort and experience working with things that have to be plugged in or lit up. The spaces themselves aren't equipped to have a lot of connections or outlets for electrical work, and the people themselves don't have the experience or time to learn it. I hope there's a world that this can happen. So one of my solutions here, is to use a sensor control relay. I took inspiration from Amy Lemaire and used her Instructable to find the parts I needed to basically make an infrared sensor that would turn on and off. And the thing I learned from this is how to really hide that little module. And then while I tested it in my basement with all sorts of lights and all sorts of things happening and thought everything was working, when I actually displayed this work, it was not running perfectly fine. It was kind of faulty. It would pick up different forms of light or heat, even if no one was in the room, and flicker. Now, the joke was that that there was a ghost in the gallery, right? Which could be true if one believes in ghosts, but I wanted to make sure that this will work in any other space. I did a little research. Sometimes if the lighting is really close by, it could pick up those wavelengths of the light and be tricked to thinking that it's picking up motion. And that's just with an infrared sensor, a microcontroller, a relay, and things like that. And that's another awesome thing about our community. Amy Lemaire has sent out a lot of different projects. And when she sent out her Instructable, it was not meant to be, this is finished. This was the beginning. That's how Amy works. She sets you in the beginning and in hopes that it inspires people to make changes and evolutions. The other reason for this type of change, besides making it easy for people having this in the exhibition, meaning that one, they get to see the object unilluminated in its glory, and as well as see a different perspective when it's illuminated. It made it so that the gallery operators don't have to unplug or plug it back in, don't have to go to a breaker line to turn off the outlet, don't have to buy a remote to turn it on and off the piece. When I was setting up an exhibition in 2021 called Light in Transmission, we had maybe 5-6 different remotes turning on and off pieces or turning some of them off by hand. And when I saw that, I realized that this needed to be part of that factor to make it easy to display, to make it so it isn't an extra burden or load on our exhibition and gallery handlers. So I thank you, Amy Lemaire, for putting forth the effort on that and showing us the start of what we can do. But it doesn't end here. I had troubles with this version, so I updated it. So I said, okay, it's not the coding that's an issue particularly. It was I was using the wrong type of infrared. So I'm using a passive infrared sensor, typical sensor used in all motion sensors that you would buy. So I bought that. It has its own little controller for an analog controller, a little dial for how long and how sensitive. Plugged that in, made a mount for it, 3D printed it, and then connected to my relay, and it works. It works perfectly fine. It's not glitchy or nothing. The other one was kind of glitchy. Sometimes it would read or bounce back a measurement that would say someone's close by or walking by, but this works perfectly fine. And this was thanks to Doug DeHaven, who is a friend that I met recently, but I've known for a while, who works at the Carnegie Science Center in Pittsburgh, and he does all their mechatronics work. So when I sent this out to him, he's like, oh yeah, you're probably using something so precise that it's going to be buggy. You need to use something that's more general. It determines if there's a change in heat as it's measuring something out in the field. If it measures a change of heat, it detects that as motion. So that's how the PIR, the passive infrared sensor, works in the most basic terms. So once I have truly tested this, I'll make my own Instructable or whatever, and you'll be able to see how to make this yourself. And I may eventually offer a simple kit so you don't have to do a lot of extra work. And that's it. That is my presentation for the sparking creativity. The lessons learned in this whole endeavor have been to, I'm going to kind of do full screen here for a second just to kind of talk to you. Where am I at? I'm trying to look for all my little, there we go. Phase cam. Hello. Yeah, so the future sort of this work is going on this same pathway. What tools can I use to make this easier? What sort of mechanisms can I provide that makes it easy for someone to install it? Guides and things like that. The goal here, and I'm not sure if I can really do it in this year, but I'll make my first resolution and never, is that I want to make a little small exhibition of these works and make this Atupa Series something that people can see in Pittsburgh. And I'll make the call out right now. I plan to make this exhibition not at the Pittsburgh Glass Center, though I know I could, and know they would support it. I think the amount of work that I would make by that time would be fairly small, but I would like to show it at the Irma Freeman Center. I want to show it at the Irma Freeman Center because this is the place that I went to first when I wanted to teach Kung Fu many years ago when I moved here to Pittsburgh. And it's been a place where I can feel comfortable to walk in, talk with the people of the neighborhood in Pittsburgh, and be able to really feel like I'm a part of the community. I've taught classes there for adults. I've taught classes there for kids to provide them something they can do during the summer, to motivate them to teach lessons about life through Kung Fu. I've used their space to trade items for Facebook Live and felt very comfortable there and felt very watched over and safe there. I've used their space for taking photos during the pandemic when I didn't feel comfortable having someone walk into my house, but found a meeting space where we had spacing to do that and took pictures of artwork over the unused kitchen in the back of the artist studios. That's at Irma Freeman Center. So that's the end goal there. There's a lot of things on my plate that I want to put out there for Taming Lightning, for the community. It's going to take a while. Right now it's a busy season, but I think this experience here with Corning has provided a lot to go on, and I'm more certain of my process more than ever. I'm more inspired to use different colors, so definitely look into Taming Lightning for the future of plasma. So check out other live streams. I got a Plasma Primer live stream collection on a playlist. on YouTube. You also have the Intro to Plasma series, chapter 1 through 4, in which the live streams are based off of. And you can support me on Patreon. Support me on Patreon at patreon.com/taminglightning. Or you can sign up for email listing on Taming Lightning. So you can scan here or go to taminglightning.net. I'm going to take a look at our comments here. Thank you for joining me, Research Lab, Sean Bradley. If anyone else have questions or anything that you would like me to follow up on, certainly put that in the comments. And as always, be safe, be healthy, and I forgot the last part of that. Peace out, and I'll see you next time.